Hi guys, Sarah here from Highland Haven Australian Shepherds and Highland Haven Dog Training, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 3 of Dog for Thought. Joining me is my co-host, daughter, and dog trainer extraordinaire, Sophie.
Hi everyone.
Hey Soph, what's going on?
Nothing much. Evie we think Evie's pregnant. So she's getting an x-ray this Friday.
Yes, so she would be 7 weeks on Friday. Mm-hmm. So actually the day that this podcast is released will be the day that we take her for an x-ray. Just a reminder that Evie is our dog, but she does not live with us. She lives with Gianna, who's a family friend. So this is going to be a very interesting experience, provided she is pregnant, which we think she is. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about why we think she is?
Yeah. So she is, I would describe Evie very much like Meadow, like pretty driven and all over the place and has all this energy. And then she does this thing like her mother where she just does these giant circles whenever we go off leash at the park together. And the last time we saw her and she was off leash, she did like 4 circles and they were super small and then stopped and went and I was like, oh, she's pregnant. And she wasn't even running like at the normal clip that she runs at, which is nowhere near as fast as Journey, but she's still very, very quick. And then she also has a very, like, she's all legs, and then she has this very beautiful shape. And that shape, it's more like standard Aussie kind of shape, not as like intense of a,
Well, she had some contour to her, and now she's very boxy.
Very boxy. And she's a very thin girl. So to see her boxy, I'm like, oh no, I think she is.
So just a refresher is with dogs is that they can mimic a pregnancy, not intentionally, but just their hormones can put them in a false pregnancy, so they can mimic a pregnancy like down to the T. Yep. And you would think they're pregnant, and then you get an x-ray and there are no puppies in there. Yeah. So that is still possible, but unlikely. I mean, false pregnancies are really pretty unusual. It's more common for them to trick us earlier in pregnancy because at that point there is no dog pregnancy test, of course. There's none. You can't take a blood test, nothing. So you can only determine pregnancy through ultrasound at about 3 weeks and x-ray, which you do once the bones of the fetuses calcify, which would be around, week 8. So I think like 49 days and more. A dog is pregnant for 72 days, right? 7 times 9. Mm-hmm. No, sorry. See, I can't even do math. 63 days. And earlier in pregnancy, you're really just going on their behavior, right? Are they acting pregnant? And maybe, are they eating more? Are they sleeping more? Are they more affectionate, less affectionate? It's like anything in contrast to what they normally would be. You think, okay, for those first 3 weeks, you're like, okay, maybe they are pregnant.
Yeah.
And it really can even go beyond that because unless you're getting a sonogram at 3 weeks, you still don't know.
And it's really hard especially with this breed, in my opinion, is because they're all pretty stocky. So like I always thought Twiggy was pregnant, because her demeanor changed and she would like stop eating and then start eating a whole bunch. And then, like you're looking at just like certain mannerisms and how she carried herself. But it just turned out she just hates being intact.
Well, but any dog can do that, right?
Yeah.
It's just that the hormones mimic a pregnancy, whether they're pregnant or not.
Yeah.
Dogs are very unique in the animal kingdom in that regard, right? So you fool yourself or, it's like wishful thinking. They're pregnant. And then we don't do sonograms at 3 weeks because they cost money. And we can just wait 3 more weeks or 4 more weeks and only pay for an x-ray. An x-ray is more useful when you're breeding dogs because at that point you can get an fairly accurate litter count, puppy count. And for me as a breeder, I want to know how many puppies that I'm expecting, plus or minus 1 or 2 in rare cases.
Yeah, just so, for the viewers, so you have all the tools you need. So like if you need puppy formula, if you... when the mother's having birth, you want to make sure you count all the puppies that come out so she doesn't have one in there that you don't know about. That could, make the mother sick. So if you counted, let's say 8 puppies and she only had 5, that's concerning, and maybe you should bring your mother to the vet right away if she's not having any more puppies come out and you clearly counted like 8 skulls on the x-ray. That's concerning. So you want to make sure you have kind of somewhat of an accurate count in case you need to bring your mother into the vet or whatever the situation is.
Right. So you don't want to like pack up your stuff and clean everything up after 5 puppies when the x-ray said 8,
Yeah.
right? A sonogram will not give you an accurate litter count at 3 weeks, but it will tell you pretty much if you have a good sonogram tech. And they're hard to find because there's not a lot of dog breeding going on in our area, in our region. So finding a good sonogram tech who can do an accurate count is hard to find, right? They can, ultrasound techs can look for other things like liver problems and whatever else you get your dog, tested for. But for pregnancy, they don't have a lot of experience in this area for that. So not ironically, it's interesting that the most accurate sonogram techs are really breeders themselves, people who breed a lot of dogs, who have their own little machine at home. They get really good at it because that's all they do.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really just counting sacks at that point. So we don't do that because it's stress on the mom to bring her to the vet and then flip her on her back. And, they're in like that foam cushion thing. So it's not painful for them, but
it's stressful.
Being handled by, strangers, essentially, even if you're in the room with them, and putting them through all that. And plus the expense, which is, you can just eliminate that by just being patient. So we go for the x-ray. So if we did a sonogram, we would also do an x-ray. So we just don't do the sonogram.
And the nice thing about the x-ray is Jacob can go in there because he works at the vet. So like it's kind of a little bit less stressful for the dogs.
For sure. Yeah.
So
that's a benefit for now.
Yeah.
That he's a vet assistant at the vet that we go to. I would guess that we are one of the few people that actually do puppy pregnancy tests at your vet. I mean,
the only people.
Yeah. Okay.
I think literally the only.
And you have a busy vet
Yeah.
office.
We have
So
people that come in for pregnancy, but that's not like they didn't want their dog to get pregnant.
right, and they're not doing an X-ray for that. And at that point, they're probably 7, 8, almost 9 weeks by the time they figure it out. Which is not the case for us. It's completely opposite for us. We wring our hands for the first 7, 8 weeks, hoping that everything will turn out. So yeah, and people are going to ask, well, doesn't an X-ray injure, isn't that bad, because you would never X-ray a pregnant human, right? But for dogs, it's different. They have a much shorter lifespan. It's one picture. It's not going to damage either mom or dog. Damage from x-rays and stuff like that. For my understanding, and I'm not a doctor, it's more of because we live so long as people, there's more damage to the cells and it can cause more problems because we have a much longer lifespan than a dog who lives 12, 14 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And it's if you weigh out the pros and cons, it benefits the mother much more knowing how many puppies you have in there in case of an emergency. So, you got to weigh out what's ethically
Costs,
right.
Benefit analysis for sure. So we will bring her in on Friday. So the day that this gets released, we're going to bring her in, and we're hoping for a large, healthy litter. Of course, there's like a tier of hopeful, things that I hope for. Number 1 is a healthy mama. Mm-hmm. I'll lose a whole litter. I don't want anything happening to my mama. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, healthy puppies. And then, of course, finding good homes for them.
Yep.
So a litter that sells well to really good people.
It's a lot of worry.
It is. And
every single time I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to have puppies. And then I worry about the mother. And then I worry about healthy delivery. And then I worry about the mother after the delivery, making sure that she gets back to health. And meanwhile, while that's all going on, you have, 2 weeks old puppies, which could easily be crushed by the mother, especially being a new experienced mother. And then you worry about it's like everything is worry. Like you worry throughout the whole thing, and then at the end you're like, and then your next female's ready to get bred, and you're like, oh, start all over again.
I mean, do you remember the summer? I think it was Journey's summer litter when they all they were 6 weeks, and they all had explosive diarrhea for 3 days.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And I was like, oh my God, this litter has got coccidia. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah, and we were doing all these tests, and it was like,
it was nothing. It was just worming. They just needed to be wormed again.
Yeah.
Was that the really wormy litter? One of them was really
No,
wormy.
Journey doesn't have wormy litters. Vivian has wormy litters. Vivian, and then she passed it on to Twiggy.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But that's because of her past. Journey does not have wormy litters, but I don't know why. We wormed them and then they stopped having diarrhea, so I don't know what that was all about.
Well, almost all puppies are born with worms.
Yeah, they weren't too worm. I don't remember seeing like crazy worms like anyways.
Anyway, that's basically it. So
TMI.
she's going to go get x-rayed, and then they email me the x-ray, a copy of it. And then I come home and I blow it up on my computer and I study it. And then
We like count it like
Gary comes
over
home
and over and over
he
again.
comes in and gives his opinion on how many. So we all guess how many puppies. So hopefully it will all go well and it'll be good news. And then we're having puppies in a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll happen quick. So they go 63 days at the most, but most of them don't go full 63 days. So why are you smiling?
I'm really excited for Gianna to like experience this. No, like I keep thinking about it like, oh, this is going to be great. I should film some of it.
Yeah, so this litter will have to manage the mama, manage the puppies, and manage Gianna. Because Evie is definitely her baby.
Is her baby, and she's been wringing her hands over this and texting us like, just
She's
like
been good. She's been
normal
very
mother
good.
stuff. Yeah,
she's been concerned, and it's a lot of responsibility for her. She wants to make sure that she doesn't do anything that causes any damage or prevents a litter from happening.
I think more or less I'm smiling because I was like wringing my hands over Twiggy because that was my baby. So to see Gianna go through that, I'm just like, I get it, girl.
Yeah, and I remember my first litter way back in the day.
She's never, like, at least with me, I know what's like the steps that are going to happen. Gianna doesn't even.
Well, that's true because you watched many litters before that.
I've helped assist. I've done all that stuff. Gianna's never done any of that. So it's going to be, and even with breeding, she was like, oh my gosh. I was like, yeah, this is what breeding looks like,
You weren't even there.
I know, but like you explained it and I know what's going on. So.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited for her.
Fingers crossed so that we have good news. Mm-hmm. All right, we should probably get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so this episode I thought we would talk about the importance of relationship between you and your dog. Mm-hmm. The reason I want, we thought about a couple of different topics today. The reason I wanted to do this one is because I feel like what we did not discuss last episode regarding resource guarding is we didn't emphasize the importance of relationship in mitigating resource guarding, right? All the things that we described that we did with Buddy and Oliver, that was all assuming that you had done, or we had done the groundwork to create a relationship with the dog, right? So they're intrinsically motivated to do the things you want them to do. So stop doing the things you don't want them to do and to do the things you do want them to do. We could never work with a dog regarding resource guarding if we didn't do some obedience with them. Like you have to develop that relationship underneath.
I would even say the reason we do board and train is so we build our unique relationship with the dog so it's easier to absorb new information. And especially with a dog with resource guarding.
Right. So we'll describe how that would be different from other types of training, not board and train where they come and stay with us for 3 weeks. I mean, if you do individual lessons, why would that be different?
Well, if I was a dog, why would I listen to you? I don't know who you are. I see you once a week. You boss me around. And then all of a sudden I leave. And then I'm with my owner who has a very different view of relationship than what, like you never, like, explain.
Yeah, because there is, I'm going to say that there almost is no relationship when we meet a dog for training. Because if there was, we wouldn't be having the problems that we're having. And that sounds like super critical of dog owners, right? And I think that maybe we should define
what relationship
it is, because it doesn't mean that you're a bad dog owner, that you don't love your dog.
And social media paints this picture of what relationship is, and I don't think that it's very accurate. You can love your dog to death,
right?
But you could, it doesn't mean you have a good relationship with them. Bottom line.
Right. Well, describe what a relationship is then.
So, in my opinion, what a good relationship between you and your dog is the work that you put in with them, right? So, asking them to do tasks, asking them to sit before eating, asking them to jump into the car, asking them to whatever but it's asking them to do something, them following through, and then you rewarding them for that behavior.
Okay, I think you're talking about how you build the relationship.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what relationship is.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. So can you describe what relationship is?
You're putting me on the spot here.
Oh, well, I'll describe it if you want.
Well, I'm trying, like, it's trust between you and your dog. Like, I would
Okay,
never
period.
Yeah, I would never put my dog in a situation that I don't think that they can thrive in. And Twiggy knows that, and Ruby knows that, and all of our dogs know that. I would never put them in a situation where they will not succeed in. And that is a back and forth
so
relationship.
Let's give an extreme example. Mm-hmm. Taking a dog to the vet. If you don't have a relationship with your dog in the way we're describing it, right? Not a relationship, but relationship. The way we're describing it. When your dog goes into a stressful situation, they're not looking to you and saying, how do I behave in this situation? If we take one of our dogs, because we have such good relationships with each one, which is trust, right? Which is what you said. We can indicate to them, like, just chill out.
Yep.
It's going to be fine. Now, that doesn't mean the dog's going to go, okay, cool, and relax, but they will be more together.
They won't take the responsibilities themselves, take all the responsibilities themselves, right? Like, they still look for you for guidance of, like, am I acting okay? Like, they know that you're going to protect them in that situation because you've built that relationship to protect them in that situation. Like, a great example is Journey at the vet. Journey is not really great with new people, as we've talked about many times, but she is the best dog at the vet. Mm-hmm. She can be handled the most at the vet. And that's because we've put so much time and effort and trust and built our really strong relationship with her. So she knows exactly how to act when she goes to the vet, and knows that she doesn't have to have any responsibility. She doesn't have to make any decisions. Mom's going to tell me exactly what to do. And that's going to take a bunch of stress and anxiety off of her plate and put it onto our plate so we can handle whatever comes our way with Journey.
Okay. So that's a very good definition. So it's basically trust.
Yeah.
It's basically, I trust you as the owner, as the human in this situation, that you're going to take care of things, and I'm just going to do whatever I need to do. I don't have to take on the responsibility of managing whatever stressful situation I'm in, right? Or any situation. It doesn't even have to be stress. No. But relationship is the most, or lack thereof, is the most obvious when a dog is in a stressful situation. I'm sure you see this all the time at the vet, Jacob. Dogs come in and they just completely have a meltdown. And that's painful for when I see that or hear about that, because I look at that and I think that's so avoidable.
And it's ruining the relationship between you and your dog.
Right. So situations like that over and over again, whether they be extreme stress like a vet, mm-hmm. or just everyday stress like, the
leash
letter carrier
reactivity.
dropping something at the door, Amazon coming,
yeah.
right?
It's like everything.
Or leash reactivity, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge one, is if your dog is leash reactive for the most part, you have not built a good relationship with them. Like, I can tell a lot by the type of leash reactivity your dog's having, and what you've done with your dog. And I think it comes from this lack of understanding of socializing, right? So it's you've put your dog in situations because media has told you that you have to socialize your dog. And us as humans think that socializing is taking your dog to the dog park, having everybody touch them, everyone meet them. If you see a dog on the walk, you're going to go say hi to that dog. And that's actually putting a lot of burden on your dog to act correctly. And when you don't have a good relationship with your dog, and then you're putting them in really high stress situations and them having to make their own decisions, that's where a lot of this anxiety and leash reactivity comes from, because either they don't like meeting other dogs, or aggression. They don't like meeting other dogs, and therefore you're putting them in situations where they have to meet other dogs and have to meet new people, and therefore they become reactive. Or the opposite, they're so excited to meet other people and dogs that they scream at you from across the road when you decide not to say hi to that person. who's coming with their dog. Even though your dog's super friendly, it's creating leash reactivity.
Yeah. So, and really, it comes down to understanding what relationship is, and that is the foundation that you need in order to have a calm, respectful, obedient, right, dog, obedient in quotes. Let's talk about the guy we saw at the park the other day. Remember with the yellow lab? Because I think that's a good example of how poor handling, and he was doing the best he could. Like, he had some good moments, and certainly his intentions were good with the dog, but the conflicting communication between him and the dog is something that would impact the relationship.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, and the thing that...
All right, so let's set up.
Okay.
Let's set it up. We're in the park. You and I are walking. I don't know. I think we had
5 dogs.
Oh, five dogs. Okay. So we come around a bend, and the park that we go to, as we've talked about before, is it's got a loop around the park. It's about a 40-minute loop, and it's got a double wide, a 2-lane road, access road that we walk on in this loop, right?
And it has like sides. So like if...
It has a shoulder, for sure.
It has shoulders, so you can really move to the side.
Which is why we do that, right? Because we can make
A
space.
lot of space.
So we came around one of the curves, and as we came around, we saw ahead of us.
Like way ahead of us was a guy with a yellow lab.
Right, and he was probably, I don't know, he was probably in his 60s, I would
Yeah.
guess.
And the dog was probably a year.
Yeah, a couple years old. It was a beautiful yellow lab.
Which is why it caught my eye. I was like, oh, that's a beautiful dog. And the guy had a treat bag and he had a nice leash and the dog was paying attention to him. Like everything, I was like, oh, this guy's not going to be a problem because he seems to know what he's doing. They're on the opposite side of the road that we are on.
So we're both walking in the same direction, but he's walking on the incorrect side.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're supposed to walk on the left, but whatever. So as we're coming around, I assume he's going to see us, right? Because my anxiety starts to itch a little bit because I don't want to have to walk by this person with 5 dogs. Even though our dogs will be good, it's just more work for us.
Yeah.
And I'd sort of like to avoid it if we can. Plus, we never know what the other dog's going to act like. So if they're reacting, then it's more work for us to keep our dogs in a calm state, right? And they can stay that way, like I say, but if we can avoid it, we can. So we're sort of walking, and I will like cough or like shuffle my feet a little bit to sort of alert them that we're coming up on them so they can keep walking. Because at that point, he had stopped and let the dog sniff, and then the dog wanted to cross the street and sniff a post,
Okay,
right?
can I explain it? So he's walking with his dog and the dog's making eye contact with him. Like they're super engaged. He's giving him treats. Like seems like he's really working hard on this dog. Then he asks him for a sit. The dog sits. He rewards him with a treat. And then he knows
Little
that the
boxes,
dog...
check.
Yep.
Check.
I was like, oh,
check.
this guy's great. I love him. And so then he looks over to his left and he sees that there's a pole and the dog wants to go smell. And so he asked for the sit so the dog could cross the road on the side that we're on to smell the pole.
To smell the road sign.
Yeah, which is fine. He released the dog, but when he released the dog from the sit, the dog dashed to like go across the street.
Pulled him over to the pole.
Yeah, and so then he corrected him, which was great, and tried to put him back in a sit, but now the dog's like all amped up. And if it was me, I would have been like, sorry, you had your opportunity to be decent about it and you weren't, and I would have just kept walking. But he didn't. He asked him for a sit again. The dog did like the fastest sit humanly possible, and then he released him and he dragged him over to the pole.
Literally dragged him over to the post.
And so now my anxiety is going up. My anxiety wasn't going up before then. It was like now he crossed the other side of the road.
And we're getting closer and
Didn't
closer.
see
And
us.
now they're on the same side. He's on the same side as us, and we're getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
I'm like, now we're going to have to either cross the road or wait for him to finish, right? So I'm hoping he'll see us.
Yeah.
And then hustle back onto his walk.
Yeah. So now his dog is smelling the pole
And
for
smelling
like
the pole.
30 seconds.
And smelling the pole.
And then he pees on the pole. And then when he pees on the pole, he looks, as he's peeing, he looks at like this large group of dogs coming towards him. And now the dog's getting excited. Not reacting, but definitely making intense curiosity.
Which is normal.
Eye contact.
Natural. Sure.
Not upset with that. Then the owner realizes that we're walking towards us.
Yeah, so the two dummies didn't see us this
No,
whole
this
time.
whole
Now
time.
the dog sees us first, then the guy sees us. So now he's thinking, oh, I better get moving.
Not even that. He's thinking like, oh, in my opinion, the way I took it is, oh, these people are walking 5 dogs. Let me show them how good my dog is. Right?
Okay, and fair enough, because I do that too.
Yeah, I get it. So now he calls him away from the pole that you just let your dog smell for
Well,
30 seconds.
At first, you let him drag you to it, and then smell an inordinately
Large amount,
length of
and
time.
then mark it. And then he's looking straight at other. So like he's already stacked against him. Like if I were him, I would have never asked for a command because that dog's already in la la land.
Because now we've established that the dog is running the show.
Yeah, he's not running. The owner's not running the show at all.
And you and
at
I
this
have
point.
not said a single word to each other.
No, we're literally just absorbing this in our own brains. Then the guy asked the dog for a sit, and now the dog's not listening to him at all because he's in his own world. He's an id.
And to be fair, this is probably what his trainer told him to do, or what he saw online, right? Get them back engaged with you. Ask them to do something, right? Make them work for you. But at this point, the dog is in a completely different state, right? He's now super focused on us. He's now been told 3 or 4 steps in a row that he's actually running the show. And now you're going to tell me that I need to do something? Nah, dude, I don't want to listen to you. I'm not listening to you. I'm going to look at these
listening to you
5
this whole time.
dogs who are about to walk up on me.
Yeah.
And at this point, we're still pretty far away. We're probably 100 feet away.
Like we're
at that
still
point.
walking, but we slowed our pace down for sure.
Yeah, hoping that he would start hustling away.
Yeah. And so he asked for the sit. Dog didn't sit. He corrected him. Asked for a sit. Dog didn't sit. Now he decides to cross the road and pull his dog across
he has no
the
choice
road
at this
because
point.
the dog is so hyper fixated on us, right?
Not barking, but just fixated.
Yeah, which I get it. You just smelt something that you claimed is your property, right? That pole, and then you marked it, and now you're staring at these dogs that are walking into your space. I don't blame the dog. And now the owner is like upset because he's like, I just gave you all these things. I just let you cross the street. I just let you smell this pole.
You ungrateful little twat.
Yeah.
Let's
and
go.
now you're not listening to me.
Which of course is, he didn't understand the steps that got him to that point. But yes, I can understand that feeling. Like, I just gave you, I just stopped my walk to let you do something. And now when I say it's time to go, you're going to be a jerk about it?
Yeah, you're going to be a jerk about it. And then I imagine the guy felt a little bit of embarrassment. Like, I asked you for a command.
For sure.
Which
everyone feels that way when your dog acts like an asshole in front of people.
Yeah, it's shame response. Immediately, the guy went into shame response. I understood where he was coming from. I understood where the dog was coming from. But it was a lack of communication between both of them, a lack of a relationship between the both of them, right? So then he drags him across to the other side of the road, and he
starts to hustle away.
But like the entire time he has tension on the leash. Like he's holding all the way to the bottom of the leash
and dragging the dog
away. And as the dog's trying to look back at us.
Right. So the dog's like got his head craned back towards us and he's dragging him away. Everybody can imagine this because everyone's had to do this with their own dog at one point. Right.
And as he's doing that, like he's stepping on the dog's foot and then the dog's squealing. And it's just like,
it's a mess.
It was an avoidable situation. The whole thing was avoidable. And now it's just kind of a dent into your relationship with your dog.
Yeah, but we're going to get to that. Let's continue.
It would have been perfect.
Right. So now he's dragging the dog away. Right?
And the dog's trying to turn around.
Once they get a distance from us, the dog is now under threshold, right? Yeah. Because we're slowing our pace and he's picking his pace up. And at some point for the dog, the threshold was reached and he was able to stop fixating, turn around and re-engage with the owner. Right. And at that point, the owner pulled off into an adjacent parking lot that has sort of like a brush barrier. So he wouldn't even see us. Turns out that's where he was parked. So we just kept walking. And I didn't say anything to you for a long time.
And as he kept walking, I noticed he did not bring those cookies out at all. And if it was my dog, after he would have started to re-engage with me, that's when you bring those cookies back out again. Like, good job. Like, that was hard.
Right. But I get where he's coming from. He's annoyed. He's a little bit embarrassed, right? And he's feeling like this dog is an ungrateful little jerk for just embarrassing me. These are all normal human shame responses, and we all have them in various situations, but almost all of us feel shame response when our dog acts in a way that we deem embarrassing, right? Because it always reflects on us, right? Yada, yada, yada. So I'm absolutely guilty of this as well, which is why it's so important that you sort of call it for what it is and try to stay in the moment. The reason I bring this whole scenario up, and then as we continue to walk, once we got almost back to the car, which was probably 15 minutes later, I asked you to break it down.
Yeah, I was like, what did you think about that guy? And then you said, oh, I have a lot of opinions. What's your opinion about it? And then I literally went on this whole tangent.
Because I wanted to see if you saw what I saw, which, is interesting because everybody will catch slightly subtle differences. I, of course, was more looking at my dogs. Was I walking 3 or were you walking?
You were walking 3, but they were all. It was a good group. The only one
our
that
dogs
was
were great.
They were amazing. The only dog that was reactive in all the 5 dogs we had was Twiggy. Well, everyone else was
reactive, meaning she was a little bit huffy, but that's it. She wasn't really.
No,
reactive.
She didn't bark
at all. She
was
was stimulated by, aroused by the situation.
Yeah.
I didn't see as much detail as you did because whenever I'm walking, even if it's just one dog, and not to mention 3, I have to really focus on the dogs, make sure that they don't step in front of me and trip me because I've been known to trip over dogs and break bones. So wasn't able to continue to walk and watch every interaction. I did hear the dog squeal, and I thought he corrected him really hard. I assume that. You told me then that no, he had stepped on his foot and the dog just squealed.
Yeah, it was like a couple times the dog kept looking back and then walking into his space, and then he kept stepping on his foot.
So the reason I bring this up is not to criticize this guy so much, right? Because he had so many things that he did right, and clearly his intentions were good, and I really appreciate that. Like the fact that he had a treat bag and he was really trying to work and engage with this dog. But it's those kinds of situations where a professional dog trainer will look at that and say, okay, the things that went wrong were dings in the relationship, right? As soon as he let the dog dictate that we were going to go over to that pole and sniff it and I'm going to drag you across the street to do that. That was where things went wrong. So in that situation, a better dog trainer, and assuming this guy's just an average guy, so it's not really a criticism of him, more of a critique, right? A better dog trainer would say, oh, you're going to act like that? Then we're not doing that. Let's go. Let's keep walking, right? Or working in a more energetic way and calling them back and having them sit and sort of getting them more engaged with you.
Yep.
Prior to then going over to the post. Because
building more relationship so they can get the reward, which is smelling the post, right? So like that's, if I really...
Building more engagement.
So it helps their relationship, and then being able to get the reward, which is smelling, right? So like rewards could be food, it could be smelling something, it could be going somewhere, it could be whatever. The reward in this case was him smelling the pole, but he never
reward
followed
could even
through.
Be getting away from something that scares me.
Yes.
That can also be a reward, right? Technically, we're talking about reinforcement, right? So when we make these kinds of mistakes, right? When we send conflicting messages, which is in the initial interaction with the dog, he is calling the shots. The owner is calling the shots. This is what we do. Isn't this fun? You get lots of rewards. Good job for listening to me. That's building relationship, right? It's the dog looking at the owner and saying, oh, all good things go through you. Absolutely, I want to work with you, buddy. I don't want to, conflict with what you want. I want to work. Let's work together, right? Because that's what relationship is. It's teamwork, right? When it started to go wrong, when he let the dog pull him across the street, now it's a conflicting message. I, as the owner, was running the show up until now. Now I'm letting you run the show in an obnoxious way, right? I'm going to let you drag me across the street. And then I'm going to let you sniff the post for a really long period of time, which I think for me is maybe slightly more controversial, my take on that. And I know you agree with me.
Yeah.
I just think that kind of extended sniffing is bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's damaging to the dog, in my opinion. Even if you have a dog that is super like
it's damaging to the relationship, not the dog.
Well, yeah, it's damaging to the relationship because then they're not engaged with you. They're engaged with the environment. They're not engaged with you anymore. So giving them too much access to smelling and stuff when you are in a walk, it doesn't build relationship. It puts your dog in a different headspace, which is
they're checking out.
Yeah,
and they're not engaged with you anymore.
I'm not really interested. If I'm going on a walk, we're going on a team walk. This is not about you. Not right now. You can have the first 5 minutes to smell and poop and pee, and then we are walking.
And they can smell. I think
as we're walking,
we're pretty, I think, rigid in this. I know there's legions of people who believe that dogs should smell as much as they want. I disagree with that. Unless they're off leash.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of off leash, right? And there are even caps on that when you're off leash, because once we get a certain distance away, they've got to catch up, right? They can't be 50 feet away or 100 feet away. They got to catch up. But they have much more freedom to sniff things for longer periods of time when they're off leash, which is why we try to, in the beginning of our walks, we walk in this big field and we try to give them the first 15 minutes off leash so that they can really have more freedom. But, it's not ultimate free. Like, there's still boundaries and rules, right? So I don't like the extended sniffing. I think it's obnoxious. And I think it sends the wrong message ultimately, because if you do all that extended sniffing and then you say, okay, you got to stop now, let's go. You've sent the message that you can stay here and sniff for a ridiculous amount of time. And then I'm arbitrarily going to tell you, let's go. It's a conflicting message.
It creates conflict between the owner and the dog. I think a great example is my girlfriend walks her dog in the neighborhood, and the most reactive, like the times that he's the most reactive and acts the worst is in his own neighborhood. And I asked her like a bunch of questions before, like just to get to know him.
Because he's super dog reactive.
Super duper dog reactive. And he's a big boy. And so I was like, what are things that you're doing? And I'm just observing her walking him, and she lets him smell for like ever. And then he puts the brakes on and doesn't move, and he's a big guy. So she has to drag him, and that's creating conflict. And then when they see another dog, he's in his own world, in his own environment, in an area that he claims as his, and he reacts 10 times worse than if we take him to a park and he's in a new environment with new things and new sensory stuff that's going on. And so the first thing I told her is stop letting him smell so much. He can smell and poop and pee for the first couple minutes, and then he has to keep walking.
Even that, there's caps on, right? So generally with our dogs, they have the length of the leash to smell. So if they're 4 feet ahead of us and they stop and smell, they've got essentially 8 feet, right? Before that leash, then they're 4 feet behind us and we're continuing to walk. There are reasons for that. We want them to stay engaged. If we're letting our dogs disengage from us periodically in a walk or in life, right? Completely disengage and go into sort of lizard brain, which is what the olfactory system in a dog is, right? Yep. They start to get super, focused on scents and stuff. It is the exact opposite of building relationship. It's damaging the relationship. It's putting a ding. I don't want to say damaging.
It's dinging it.
Yes.
And the more dings you have, the worse the relationship is.
So he let the dog smell for a ridiculous long period of time, which is sending a conflicting message. And then he said, oh, shoot, here come some people. The dog looked up. He sees people. He's peed on now the post. He's smelled it for 30 seconds. Now he sees us walking up. And now he's in a completely different mindset. And so to get him out of that mindset, you're going to have to physically remove that dog, right? There's not going to be any really engagement bringing him back. No, it's going to be pretty difficult because the reward of the reinforcement of seeing us coming up on him is so much more important than a cookie in a bag. Well,
and like I just smelt this pole as I claim is mine. I dragged you to this pole. I claim it as mine. I smell it. I claim it as mine. I peed on it. I claim it as mine. And now these dogs are walking at it. It's mine.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I didn't come up with that. That was completely your take on that, which I thought was a keen observation because now he's really aroused by it.
Yeah,
right?
and like really he immediately and he seemed like a pretty he had a lot of loose body language.
Very sweet guy. Yeah.
And as soon as he saw us, he just went. And I was just like, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't react. Mm-mm. He just was like, I'm not moving, which is a completely natural situation because the guy inadvertently had set this up. Now he drags the dog away. And we all have been in that situation where we've made those very subtle mistakes. And then we realize where we're at and we have to physically drag our dog away from something or someone. And you have to do that. But once you're dragging away, now you need to, the next thing he did wrong was not trying to re-engage him. So maybe dragging away for 20 feet until he got a little bit farther and then try to re-engage. and then go 10 more feet and then try to re-engage
And
until
then-
he got to the point where he was under threshold and able to then re-engage with you.
And then ending the walk positively. Like,
Right. So
he
at that
ended
point,
the
you're then
walk
rewarding,
negatively.
right.
And the entire time he was taking him to the car, he had leash tension. So it's telling the dog that, like, it's just all these mixed messages. Like, yeah, you can be in control right now, but now I'm in control. And then the entire rest of the walk, I'm going to be in control in a very uncomfortable way. Even though you didn't bark, you didn't react.
Right.
Like, there was 1,000 things that the dog did right that you could have ended that walk positively. And there are cases where there's no way you're going to get your dog out of that threshold, right? Like,
Once
they are
they're-
reacting.
Once they're in a state, it's like shoving them in the car and shutting the door
Yep.
and calling it a day. We've been there,
Yeah,
right?
but this was not one of those cases.
No, 'cause
and
he
the
was a good
dog,
guy.
Yeah, and the dog bounced back pretty fast. Once he went into, like, even before that, before he went into the parking lot where his car was, the dog was already starting to re-engage, and therefore I would have started giving him cookies and been like, oh yeah, that's a good guy.
Was the last thing that really annoyed me was that he didn't try to re-engage. He didn't loosen up that leash once he was out of the danger zone, right? He didn't then loosen up the leash and then attempt to re-engage. And then when he got re-engagement, reward, and shake it off as a human and, trot back to the car happily and go in the car and analyze the mistakes that you made and do it differently next time. That being said, that's really hard to do.
And if you don't know what you're looking at, I get where the guy's coming from of just being annoyed. And the problem is people aren't like dogs. Dogs really live in the present. So once a situation's done, they're done with that situation. Right. People are not. People think about it, manifest it, like they just, and then the next situation happened, they are more intense with the dog because they're like, oh, you're not allowed to, I remember last time. The dog doesn't remember last time. The dog was just, in an id state. And now you kind of dinged your relationship in this area with him. And the more dings you get, the more your dog will become reactive instead of the opposite of what you were trying to get at.
Right. So, I mean, this was not a horrible situation. This was not a bad owner. In fact, this was an owner with some skill and understanding, but missing an important pivotal piece. And when we talk about relationship, those kinds of mistakes damage your relationship, make it step back rather than move it forward, right? So,
especially then ending the walk that way.
Yeah, for sure. And again, the dog's going to forget about that individual situation, but next time they're in that situation, it's going to be the same thing unless the owner starts to do something differently.
And now the owner is going to be like, oh, I'm not going to, and then the dog, it's such a, once it kind of, I could just see it kind of deteriorating as time goes on.
Let's bring up the fact that he was probably a boomer, right? Probably a guy in his 60s. So his default is going to be towards punishment, right?
You must listen to me.
Right. So he dragged him away physically, right? Didn't abuse the dog, but just dragged him away.
No.
Had a tight leash, stopped positively reinforcing the dog, stopped trying to engage, right? Because he was annoyed by the whole situation.
And that's what you're taught in that generation.
A millennial will have a very different reaction in that situation, right? There wouldn't have been any relationship at all to begin with.
No, well,
the dog would have been dragging them around to begin with, dragging them across the street, and then dragging them away. The dog would have been reacting. So it's and of course this is all generalizations, but like millennials have a complete polar opposite and are afraid to punish, are afraid to hold accountable as a whole. I mean, again, generalizations. Whereas the older generation is more socialized towards the punishment part.
It's
and
funny
you must listen because these are the rules, damn it.
Yeah, it's a very black and white view of something that is very gray.
Right. So, that certainly plays into his reactions. I'm a Gen X, but certainly my generation is going to be closer to the punishment and accountability sort of bent rather than it's all fine and good and you can do whatever you want and I'm just going to love you. So that was, I think, a good example of how your actions can either improve your relationship or damage it.
And that wasn't even like a bad situation. I think the guy was really, really trying.
For sure.
And I think for the most part, people are doing their best. And there's so much information out there now that it's like, what should I listen to? And therefore, I think people's default is like, oh, well, I'll just love them. I'll just love them and let them do what they want to do on the walks.
Okay, so this is one example that sort of goes towards, again, being overly punishing in a situation where you need it to be more reinforcing, positively reinforcing, right? So let's look at the opposite, which I, alluded to, which is this belief that all you need to do to build relationship with your animal, whether it's a horse or a dog or whatever, is just love them. And how that can be damaging, which seems sort of counterintuitive, because when you ask, do you have a relationship with this dog, people will get very indignant and go, well, yeah, I love this dog more than anything. I give him cookies all day long and endless love and attention. What do you mean I don't have a relationship? Of course I do. I love this dog more than anything in the world. Okay, well, that's also not building relationship and can be damaging.
That's the problem right there. That's the problem. You just told me the problem that you have with your dog. It's just like, let's pull back the cookies. Let's pull back the love. Let's let him earn the love. Because especially being human, we should understand this the most, it is so much more satisfying when you earn something rather than just being given it. You agree with me on this aspect. It's like when you are playing on a sports team and you all collectively win a game together, like you all really tried and you did your best and you won that game because you guys did your absolute best. It's so much more rewarding than you playing against a really crappy team and just winning the game because the team isn't good. Yeah, we can play really bad teams and get that win, but I rather lose against a team that's really, really good, but we tried our best.
So you're talking about teamwork.
Yeah. And that's what a relationship is between you and your dog. It's teamwork. You guys are building this thing together. And even if that dog did not have a good day, right? That the whole situation went downhill. If that guy was like, my bad, I set him up for failure, right? And then turned and walked away, got into the parking lot, loosened the leash, started re-engaging and asking for sits and giving him cookies, that is a big, big, big W, because you just failed and you were able to bounce back from that. The dog's going to remember that. Like, that was miserable. I didn't listen to dad. Therefore, I got this taken away from me. But then he brought me over here and I re-engaged with him and I had a really good time with him. Turns out when I do listen to dad, I have way more fun than if I don't listen to him.
Right. So I think that when you're talking about different views in parenting, okay, when you're talking about the boomers and millennials, let's give an example, right? You're skipping the Gen X in the middle there. Boomers tend to be more transactional. I feed you, I give you a house, I send you to school, therefore you must
listen to me,
respect me, right? And do what I say, right? You're living under my roof. That kind of tends to be more of the older generation's view of parenting, right? And the millennials went completely polar opposite, which is there's no accountability, right? I'm just going to love you and that'll be enough. And
everyone gets a trophy.
And they get very, people who believe that relationship or loving your children should never be transactional, right? Oh, that seems so transactional when you say you have to earn my love. It's not exactly what parents are saying. It's not exactly what we're saying about dog training, but relationships are transactional by their very nature, because in order to have teamwork, you both have to give, you both have to take. It's
being alive is transactional.
Yeah. Of course, I'm always going to love you unconditionally, but that doesn't mean that we're going to have a loving relationship, right? A good relationship. My love doesn't have conditions for you, but our relationship does.
You could love me. That doesn't mean you like me.
Yeah, right. So maybe is the relationship, is the somewhere in the middle, right?
Yep.
So it's the same with your dog. If you give unconditional love without boundaries and clarity and rules, right? There is no relationship. Mm-mm. And it's honestly, it's the same view from your dog, right? That's what the relationship, the key is. They have to see it also in that same way. They have to be respected when they ask for space, right? all of those indications when they're trying to communicate with you, if you don't see them and ignore them, or see them and intentionally ignore them, that also is damaging. So it is a two-way street. You know, I try not to get in any of our dogs' space when they clearly don't want it. Like sometimes I'll go to reach to pet one and they'll sort of dodge my hand. That's a real Aussie thing, by the way.
It is.
It's annoying. And when they do, sometimes it kind of pisses me off. I'm like, dude, I was just going to scratch your head. Fine. If you don't want my attention. Of course, this is all internal dialogue.
I mean, with Journey is so quiet and keeps to herself, and you know, so anytime like Journey comes up and like asks for affection, I try not to touch her, because I know that not all the time she doesn't want to be touched all the time. She just wants to be acknowledged. And so sometimes I'll respect and be like, okay, like I acknowledge you being a very good girl, blah blah, and I'll just talk to her and won't touch her. And other times I'm just like, I want to touch you, you know. So it and that goes the other way with dogs too,
and
right?
if you don't do that with Journey, she will not F with you. Period.
Nope. She'll just go in a different room and not.
She'll be like, you're fine, but I don't want to have any kind of relationship
because you don't
with
respect
which
me.
is why she has 4 people in her life. Basically. So she is such a sensitive dog that if you ignore her her requests for space, she will just not be interested in forming a relationship with you.
Where we can look at the opposite side of the spectrum, which is Twiggy. And Twiggy is so in your face and so all over your
You can't give her the attention.
You have to, like, she doesn't respect my space, so therefore I'm not going to give you attention. I told you multiple times, I do not want you jumping on me when I'm sitting here on the couch and you're in my face. Go over there. You're not respecting my space, so I'm not giving you any attention. So it's a two-way street.
Yeah, those are the really polar opposite dogs in the house. Twiggy tends to be really anxious and easily stimulated. Overstimulated. So
give me reinforcement.
You literally should not pet her in that state, because it only seeks to make her more upset. She thinks she wants you to pet her, but soon as you touch her, it gets worse and worse and worse. So that's another situation where you as the human need to say, no, I can't touch you right now, not with this behavior.
And then when you think she's ready, she's still not ready. And I'm like, oh, my bad. Let me wait another 20 minutes until you chill out.
So relationship by its very definition is transactional, right? It's a two-way street. So you have to respect their boundaries when they're trying to communicate with you for them to trust you, right? Because if you're constantly running roughshod over them, doing things like picking up your lab and going, he loves it. And the dog's like, I don't want to be picked up, put me down. Most big dogs don't want to be picked up. When you constantly ignore their requests for autonomy, reasonable autonomy, that you have a dog then it doesn't trust you, because I constantly tell you things. So that's when you sometimes see, will cause behavioral issues and even aggression, right? Because they have to constantly escalate to get their point across. Like, dude, I didn't want you in my face. I didn't want you over here. I don't want you to do this. I don't want you to do that. So in those situations, we have to make sure that we're understanding what they're trying to communicate to us, and also setting boundaries, because sometimes it's non-negotiable, right? But in order to set a non-negotiable, there's got to be relationship. So like all of these things are connected in order to have good communication.
I have a good example of not respecting another dog. My friend, his parents went on vacation and they left him to watch the dog. And so I went over to his house and we were like hanging out and stuff. And the dog was so anxious. I like felt it before I even walked in the house because of the type of bark that he was doing at the window. And then when I got in there, he was like all over the place and alert barking and running around. Like he just like had no structure or anything.
Right.
Like he was just,
this behavior was out of character for him.
And I was like, oh, what's up with him? And you know, he's been acting crazy since my mom's not here and I don't know what to do with him and blah, 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 blah. And he whines to get in my room and I let him in my room, and then he whines to get out of my room. So I let him out of my room. That's a dog that doesn't have a good relationship with you. That's a dog that does not trust you. When his mom's there and dog's walking around, if he gets a hand on the dog, he picks the dog up and grabs him and rubs him hard, and it's out of love. But the dog does not like it. And I've told him multiple times, what if you were just walking around and someone picked you up, flipped you on your back, and just rubbed you and grabbed your head as hard as possible? Would you like that? No, it's called bullying. If someone does that to you in school, it's called bullying. Like you're,
or it's like your creepy Uncle Charlie.
Yeah,
He's
like,
constantly touching you, and you're
does
like,
not
dude,
like
back
it.
off.
And so he was all anxious, pacing. And I was like, can we just go inside and like watch TV? And he was like, oh, why? And I was like, I just feel like this poor dog just needs some like chill couch time. And then we sat down, and his dog doesn't love me, but like I respect his bodily autonomy. I never pick him up unless he asks. Like I'm very much so like that's his space. I'll respect his space. And if he comes over here and asks for attention, I'll give him attention. And we sat on the couch, and I put a pillow in between me and him because I knew he probably would most likely come lay next to me if we had some space in between us. That dog came and curled up on my lap and went to sleep. Probably the first time he went to sleep in this entire week that his parents have been on vacation. And even though I do not have a very good relationship,
You don't know him very
I don't
well.
know him very well at all. I have a better relationship than he does with the dog. So therefore, the dog felt comfortable enough to come and lay on my lap and finally turn off the first time this entire week.
Poor guy.
You know, so it's that's what I'm talking about. You could have no relationship with a dog, but just respect their autonomy, and they will cling to you more than they will cling to someone who's living in the same environment as them. If you don't respect their, space and who they are.
So let's go all the way back to why board and train works. Maybe we should wrap up with that. So I asked you initially why board and train, works better than individual lessons. You described what an individual lesson would look like. For board and train, when they come to us, and we've talked about this before, they're nervous and stressed, as they should be. When they're not nervous or stressed, I think there's something wrong with this dog. This dog is not reading the room. This is a strange place with strange people. You should be nervous. You have no idea who I am.
The only time I'm like, is if they're a really, really young puppy.
Yeah, and they're just dopes.
And they're just dopey.
Right.
But if you were an adult dog and you were really comfortable in a new environment, that is concerning. And I'm going to expect bad behaviors in the next couple of days that are going to come out.
Who doesn't literally read the room, a dog who doesn't have any kind of social skills, is a dog who would be immediately comfortable in a strange situation, right? So they're nervous and uncomfortable. And I know we've talked about this before. The first 3 days they're with us is the time to build trust with the dog, right? We're the only port in the storm. So even the dogs that come to us that can be so fearful they become aggressive if you push them, it just takes some patience and kindness and respect of their space. And within a day or two, the extreme cases, 3 days, they're suddenly feeling much more comfortable with us. And that initial understanding that I'm going to let you settle in your own time, and I'm going to respect your space and not push you, is key in building a relationship. So we can build relationships with the dog really quickly in a situation like that. You can also damage them psychologically permanently if you do it wrong.
It's really walking on eggshells the first 3 days that you have a new dog, and really making sure you build a solid foundation before asking them to do anything. So like if I have it's because we work with a large group of Aussies, since that's like our specialty. Aussies are always the worst ones. The Aussies with behavioral issues are always the worst ones. The longest one we had, it took me a week to actually break into
was tough.
him.
Yeah.
And we had to leave a long, one of those
We had to leave
leash
him
with the
attached to a
chain.
leash. Yeah.
It was a chain leash because he would
couldn't
grab
touch
the
him.
leash
Yeah.
and he would try to bite you. And it took me forever to build a relationship with that dog. I would just sit in the same room with him across the room, and he would be giving me whale eyes and like, whatever. And then I would just put him away and feed him and walk him, and just did all the bare minimum stuff with him.
And the key is to just not touch them.
Yeah, I just didn't touch him, didn't
Which
acknowledge
is why
him.
it's important to have like some sort of a leash on them so you can handle them safely and just not touch them.
Yeah.
They can't be touched in a state like that.
But then after you break through, it's like, I can do anything with that dog now.
Right. Because you passed the ultimate, as your dad says, the ultimate test. the ultimate test. You know, and really indicated to this dog that, you know, I am hearing you.
Yep.
So you can trust me.
I see you. I understand what you're feeling, but there are still things we have to do.
Right.
And there's things that I'll let you get away with, but these are the things you have to do.
Once you get to that point, then you can start working with them for obedience and stuff, which is in the learning process is always positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
There's no corrections when you're learning. But when the time comes, you can then start using corrections, punishment for bad behavior, whatever, because you've already built that relationship underneath.
And if we did normal, just kind of lessons and stuff, every single time I would start to build a relationship, it would be rebroken because the dog would go home with the owner and redo all these bad habits again. And so that's why, you know, it's
sure.
a tricky balance between.
But I also think that the studies show that punishment and dog training, right, leash corrections, are only damaging to a dog when it's out of the blue and there are no connections made. And that's the key. You know, people are like, oh, positive only, positive only. There's nothing wrong with accountability as long as it's clearly understood and consistently and fairly applied. In fact, not only is it not bad, but it actually is good for the brain because the brain is designed for struggle, right? So it's super important to build that foundation first before we do any sort of punishing stuff, because punishment without understanding and that's inconsistently, sporadically applied, that can be damaging to a dog psychologically. With Buddy, to go back to the resource guarder that we had here for 4 weeks, it was about halfway through when he, not out of the blue, I went to take something from him that I had taken from him many times in the previous 2 weeks, and he just didn't want to give it to me. And when I applied pressure, he bit me. And it was at that point that instinctively I knew that we had already built the relationship. And so I got after him after that. I mean, I was mad.
Yeah.
How dare you do that? And basically chased him around the room, scared the pants off him. And I was fairly confident that my reaction was clearly understood for him and that we had built enough foundation that he could not only withstand that punishment, but could apply it to his future behavior. But I still came upstairs and said to you, let's see.
Fine line.
Let's see what I just did to
Yeah.
this. Let's just see if my instincts are correct or not. Let's see if this either makes him worse, which I didn't think, but it's certainly possible if I didn't do it correctly, had no effect, right? So it would have to be applied again, maybe more intensely, or actually was a positive step forward. And I was curious to see, and it turned out what I had suspected, which was I drew a very clear line in the sand with him. Like, you do not put your teeth on me ever again. Do you understand? And in return, you're going to get all my love and affection. We're going to have lots of fun together. We're going to do all kinds of team building activities that you love, right? But there is a line here. And because we had spent 2 weeks working with him, it was at that point that I could do that. And he was like, oh, I get it. Yikes. I won't do that again. That's using relationship to teach.
Yeah.
Right, to work on behavioral issues. You can't do that in an individual lesson.
No,
you can't.
You can't. And then they're going to go home and they're going to rehearse all these bad behaviors with their owner. And then, you know, it's almost not fair because you're not really giving the owner time to process the new behavior that you're instilling to the dog. They're going to make mistakes. We're human. We make mistakes. The dog's going to make mistakes. But if you're able to kind of put the dog in more of a head start than the owner eventually will be able to catch up to where the dog's at.
Right.
So that's why board and train works for us, because we can head start the dog, get the dog to a place over here, and the owner can mentally prepare for what they're coming back to, and then they can handle a dog up here, but they can't handle a dog down here anymore. So it's kind of giving them more of like a jump start to a car and seeing if you're able to keep that car running properly after that.
Right.
So
I mean, it's important to say that it's good board and train, right? Because you want to make sure that the person that you're sending your dog to is trustworthy, and your dog isn't going to be harmed in any way.
Yep.
Because of course they're out of your sight,
Yep.
living with someone, and you want to make sure that that person comes with really good references, and that you have a really good feel for them when you interview them, right? When they talk on the phone.
Otherwise, it could be the
it could
opposite.
be the worst possible thing your dog could go through when you're not dealing with somebody who's a really good dog trainer, and that is not only kind to dogs but ethical. We want to be kind to dogs for sure. We want to interact with them.
We want to build relationship. We want them to. Like my favorite thing is going to like the next lesson we have with them, and them running to us, being like, "Oh my god!"
Oh, they're always so excited. They're over the moon to see you because you spend the most time with them.
Yeah.
They're by extension happy to see me for sure, but they really lose their shit when they see you for sure.
I do a lot of the.
And the owners love that.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh my god, he missed you, or she missed you. She just loves you." That makes them feel good because a dog will not fake it. They can't. It's impossible. So that's why we send so many pictures and videos when they're here with us, because I mean, I could, fake lots of stuff in front of a camera, but you can't fake emotion in a dog.
No, them running around playing and
coming
being
up, sitting
excited
with you and giving you doe eyes and all that stuff. All right. So I don't know. Do you think we covered relationship at all?
I think we bounce all over the mat.
Yeah, that's what we always
Relationship's hard though, because it's such. I wanted to make sure that we're not like being too harsh on like one side, but also it's such a gray area. Dogs are so gray that you really have to find kind of an in between of what relationship you have with this particular dog. I mean, we have 9 dogs. Each relationship we have is different with them, and it's a fine line depending on who we're dealing with, if it's Journey or if it's Twiggy, and what type of relationship you want to build with them.
Yeah, and again, I've said this before. This is why we have so many dogs, because if we just had one dog, for me, it would have to satisfy all of my multiple personalities. This way, if I want like some high energy attention, I'm going to look for, Meadow. If I want to just give some sweet pats, I'm looking for Ty, who is just super happy for you to bend down, give him a couple of kisses and some scratches under his chin, and then he goes back to sleep.
Yeah. If you want a really fun walk with like perfect recall, Deacon, Meadow, they'll come back in like 2 seconds.
If you want to play fetch, you're going to go out with Journey. If you want to do
Twiggy.
tricks, you're going to do Twiggy.
Yeah. So each dog brings something different to the table. If you want to be in a room with stinky farts and like no pets, you could just come in my bedroom with Ruby. That's all you get with her.
Oh, I thought that was you doing all the farts.
No. Every night she bombs my room, man. I'm like,
why do you think I sleep with the window open? It was, I think, 5 degrees overnight. I still had the window cracked because 7 dogs or 6 dogs in one room can get pretty stinky.
She'll be laying across my room.
Hey, when you're that age, you'll be cracking them off too.
It's crazy. I feed you the same food every day. How can it get worse?
Gotta love them.
Yeah.
They're not particularly farty dogs, Aussies. I don't know how people live with bulldogs because they come out the womb like that.
Man, they're stinky. Well, there's a handful of dogs that are really stinky. Bulldogs up there. Maisie's can be pretty stinky. Sorry, Poppy.
Oh, Maisie the pug.
Yeah, man. I watched her for like a week or two, and she would lay by my head and she'd crack them off in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh no, Poppy sleeps with this dog, and she snores and wake me up, scare me, and she's just snoring. I just readjust her so she didn't snore.
She has very few bad qualities.
No, those are her only bad qualities. That's
Well,
literally
she's the
it.
perfect dog.
There's no other bad qualities. She's just stinky and snores. That's it.
Yeah, I love.
And she's bad with her nails, but that's a pug thing. So
for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so everybody should think about the kind of relationship they have with their dog, and don't be afraid to ask them to do things for you. Don't be afraid to get them to earn some of your, if not your love, certainly your attention. Maybe that's the bottom line. Is that it doesn't have to be, your love doesn't have to be transactional, but your attention for a dog should certainly be transactional. And they'll understand that. That's the language that they will understand.
And see if it improves your relationship with them, because you will see a huge improvement if you stick with it for like 2 weeks.
True, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's wind it up. What are we going to talk about next week? Oh, next week we should have some puppy news.
I thought we would talk about like why we breed the dogs we breed for families.
Yeah, that's a good topic
because it goes with
it'd be imminent for puppies to be born. And then the week after that,
we'll talk about
the whelping. Hopefully, knock on wood, we'll talk about a healthy whelping of 10 puppies.
Yeah, we'll talk about how Gianna reacted to everything.
Maybe Gianna
can come on the podcast.
Well, she'll be here because she'll be like living with us probably for the first few days at least. So she'll be here. So maybe she can come on and talk about
her experience, her first time.
Yeah, the experience of a newbie.
Yeah, you hear that, Gianna? You hear that? You're going to come on the podcast, newbie.
All right. So that's it for this week.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I guess we'll see you guys next week on Dog for Thought, episode 4. Remember to like and subscribe because that really helps our algorithm and gets our podcast out to other people, which we love. I'll see you guys next time on Dog for Thought. Bye. Dog for Thought is written and hosted by me, Sarah Brown, co-hosted by Sophie Brown, produced, edited, and original music by Jacob Brown. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.